Chinavision recently got in touch with me and suggested that I might want to have a look at one of their new car DVRs. This one's a little bit different to any I've tested before because it's a dual camera model, and it's also got built-in GPS. Now the thing with this one is that it's really rather cheap. It's about £54. Now on top of that you're going to be paying for postage and import duty, but still that's a pretty low price for all those features. It comes supplied in a plain white box, and inside the box you've got the camera itself and a mounting kit to stick it on your windscreen, a 12-volt car power adapter with a USB plug on the end, the instruction manual, a GPS antenna. Yes, it doesn't have a built-in antenna, it's separate, and that comes with 3 extra sticky pads to attach it to your car. And one of the good things that I thought about this one was that they put this on the screen so you can't miss it, telling you to use a Class 6 card in it. So I was using a Class 10 in mine. And as you can see here, the lens on the front of the camera can be moved up and down into a few different positions. There's a speaker on the front there as well. On the back here you've got a 16:9 screen, and the lens on the back is in the middle of this 4-way D-pad. You can see it there. Now the lens on the front of the camera is 140 degrees and the one facing into the car is 120 degrees. And of course around that lens there you've got those 4 buttons, so you've got to be careful you don't smudge the lens when you're pressing those. Right, I'll just turn on the camera and we'll have a bit of a play around with it and see what the different options are. Now you can see on the screen here it's split down the middle. Just to make that clearer, I'll put this car model on the table here, and now you can see the front camera is the one on the left and the rear camera is the one on the right. A little bit hard to see that because of the lights, but you can see there that's the front camera. Now we'll just press the mode button. That gets into the playback mode, and you flip between the different files you've created by pressing left and right and OK to play those if you wanted to. Press the mode button again and it's back into record mode. There's only the 2 modes, there's no photo mode or anything daft like that. Now if you press the OK button you can flip between the 2 different camera views and have those full screen if you want, or keep them split like this. It does stretch them, so it's best just to keep the 2 camera modes on the screen. In the setup menus we'll just go through these quickly. I'm going to go right down and then back to the beginning just to show you what's there. There's no more options than this. It's a very simple camera this really. There's very little that you can do with it. One of the things you can do is have it record either the front, the back or both cameras together. You can set up the time, you can format the card. You can see all these different options on the screen here. They're all pretty much self-explanatory. The LCD default basically turns the screen on or off. The G sensor or G-force sensor can be set to low, normal, high or off. Now people that have had this in other cameras have sometimes mentioned that the potholes in the road can set off this function. This stops the current file being overridden if the camera is involved in a bump, so the option to turn it off is quite useful. Now the other things on the screen here, I think you've seen them all before, there's nothing special going on there. There's no motion detection in this camera. Now the other thing is at the top right of the screen here you'll see when I press the power button it selects between those 2 different squares and that shows you which is being recorded. You've also got the battery life and the time and date at the bottom here. Now if we set it recording here and just do a little bit of a test recording, you can see it says record at the top left there, and I'll press the button to stop it recording and then we'll go back into the playback mode and then we'll play that back by pressing the OK button at the left here, and now this is the file being played back that we've just recorded. Just to demonstrate what it kind of looks like really. So it's as simple as that. Let's have a look at the mounting options. Well, this is the thing that attaches to the camera. Rather strange looking device. It clips on the front here, it's plastic, and it clips on the back there, as you can see, holds it quite firmly in place. It still enables you to move that lens up and down, and I suppose you could put that either on the top or the bottom of the camera depending on which way up you wanted to mount it. And then what you do is of course screw it into this tripod type mount here. And there you go, that's how it would attach to your car. It's got 2-way orientation, you can move it up and down and tilt it left and right. Now it's quite easy to get it out of that mount again. You can just sort of pull it out like that. So once you've got the mount on your windscreen, it's very easy just to leave the mount there and pull the camera out, which is quite handy. Of course, the thing that we haven't done yet is attach all the wires to it, which does make that a little bit more complicated. So let's have a look at those. Well, first off, this is the GPS antenna. It's got this strange plug on the end of it, this sort of 4-way plug here. Now, it doesn't have a built-in antenna, so if you want GPS, you're going to have to attach this, and it does come with those spare stickers that I mentioned before. It goes behind this flap on the end of the camera here, and in there you've got your micro SD, your USB, and the plug for the GPS. Now we'll just get that micro SD out. You see it's a little bit fiddly just pulling that out of there, but as I mentioned before, I'm using a class 10 card during my test, but it does recommend a class 6 as a minimum. Now one thing that I really didn't understand is why they had the rubber flap over the end of this, because the camera's pretty useless without all these wires and things attached. So why would you bother putting a cover over that? But anyway, we'll plug in the GPS antenna here into the little socket if I can do it properly. And there you go, it pops in there like that. And now we'll plug in the car 12 volt power adapter. So we'll just get the standard USB mini B lead here and just plug that into that end there. And now you can see what the thing actually looks like when it's properly wired up. And that rubber flap that I was mentioning there just sort of sticks out in a kind of annoying way. So I think if I was doing this properly, I'd probably just pull that off completely, because I just don't see the point behind that. It's just really annoying. But anyway, there you go. Let's test it out on the road. Right, I think this might be as good a time as any for me to test out the sound recording capabilities on the camera. And whilst I'm doing that, I'd just like to explain why it appears on the footage that I'm wearing purple, when in reality this is a dark brown shirt. And the reason for that is because they've left off the IR filter on the interior camera. It appears that the exterior camera does have one on, but for some reason the interior one doesn't. And by leaving that off, it means that all the darker colours, such as the brown that I'm wearing, come across on the video as being purple. Now one possible reason for leaving off that IR filter might be that if you wanted to record the interior of the car at night time, if you were to wire up some IR night vision LEDs, you'd be able to light up the inside of the car so that the camera could see it without blinding all the passengers, but that's just an idea. Now one thing I have noticed about the footage, if you look at the road here, it does go a little bit too dark at times. It doesn't seem like it adjusts the brightness very well in certain conditions. It really likes a nice sunny day. But other than that, I think it looks quite decent. It records at 30 frames a second according to the specs, but in reality it drops about 4 of those frames, so records perhaps 26 frames a second, but it's still nice and smooth. The video resolution is 1280 by 480, a little bit of a strange resolution, but it seems to work quite well. Anyway, let's have a look at some nighttime footage. So the first thing that you've probably noticed here is that the interior footage of the car is really rather useless in this kind of low light. However, the exterior footage is really rather good. I've zoomed in on it here, and as you can see, it's very clear. It's easy to make out everything that's going on, and it's doing rather a good job. If you look at the bottom of the screen there, you can see that this is 20 past 10 at night, so it's well past my bedtime. Now, it's picking up a little bit of blue out of the sky, which wasn't really visible to the naked eye, but it shows you what a good job it does of picking up any light that's in the scene at all. Now, when you contrast that to the interior of the car, you can see how dark it really was at this time of night. So, I think the nighttime capabilities of this camera are really quite impressive. Now one thing I like about this camera is its simplicity, but that means it's stripped down quite a lot of its features. For one thing, that USB port on the side is just for power. According to the instructions, it doesn't work with the USB protocol, i.e. you can't plug it into your computer to pull the files off it. So if you want to get the files off the camera, what you have to do is eject the micro SD card and put that into some sort of card reader and then pop that into your computer. Now that might seem like a bit of messing about, but you've got to remember what this camera is supposed to be. It's attempting to be a black box recorder for your car, much in the same way that a black box flight recorder in a plane records every journey, and they only pull the information off it in the event of an incident. The same thing's supposed to apply for this camera. You record every journey you make, and then in the unfortunate event of an accident, you then pull the video files off it to use as evidence of who was at fault. Not just for looking at for the sake of it. But let's see what does happen when you put that memory card inside your computer. Well, it shows up as an additional drive, and if you double click on that drive, you'll find there's no video files showing on there at all. The only thing that does appear is this piece of software called JPlayer. Now, much in the same way that an iPod relies upon iTunes to be able to get files on or off it, this car camera relies upon JPlayer to be able to access the video files that you've recorded and you've stored on that memory card. So let's have a look at JPlayer. Now, JPlayer only works on a PC. I'm using it on this Atom PC, which is pretty underpowered, so that means I can't run a screen capture program the same time as the software, so you'll have to bear with the kind of rather grainy footage from my camera pointing at the screen here. But we'll try and show you around the screen. At the right hand side bottom right here are all the files that are on that memory card that it wouldn't let me look at before. You'll see it pulls the map data through on the top right through the internet from Google Maps. Across the bottom here you've got transport keys that enable you to play and pause the video. And as I mentioned, I am on an Atom PC and it's playing really nice and smooth, which is quite impressive. It must be a pretty decent piece of software, this. And you can see the map on the right hand side following my journey down the road. Across the top of the screen here, you've got the coordinates for the GPS as well as the speed, which you can swap between miles per hour and kilometers per hour. And across the top right there, you can also select which camera view you're going to be looking at on the screen from the two different cameras, or having them side by side like that. Below that you've got that G-force indicator thing, which shows the kind of forces acting upon the car at that particular moment in time. We can adjust the volume at the bottom of the screen here, and we can also play the files at a different speed, at fast forward and reverse, and again runs really quite smoothly on such a low powered PC as this Revo 3600 that I'm running it on at the moment. So you don't need to worry about your computer not being able to run this, I don't think. You'll see the map at the top right there still following me along. That does require a constant internet connection. You can flip the video footage at the bottom here in case you have the camera mounted the other way up. Now, one thing I'm going to show you is the gap between files, because people are always interested in this. So we'll move it to the end and press play, and there you go, it's jumped to the next file. There's no gap at all. I'll just demonstrate that again. So what we'll do, we'll pause it and pull the file right up to the end of one recording, which are about 2.5 minutes each, and we'll just watch it jump over into the next one, and there's no jump, there's no gap, there's no sort of pop on the soundtrack at all. It's just completely smooth. Now, the next thing that you might want to do is export these files. So if you click on the menu at the bottom left, you can choose which ones you want to export out of this piece of software. This is the only way you'll get the video footage out of it, and it's how I used the footage earlier on in the video. You can click the different files you want to export and click where you want to save them to, and you'll see this bar moving across the middle of the screen here with a percentage mark there. I'll just move forward in time so you can see what happens when we get to the end. And what it does then is it saves all those files wherever you chose to save them as one AVI file, which then I'm going to demonstrate now by just double clicking and pressing play on. And you'll see I've got that video file all as one double screen image, running nice and smooth as an AVI file. So that's how you get the files off the camera if you wanted to do that. Right, so just when everything was seeming to be going so well, it's time for me to jump in with a bit of a problem. It's quite significant, really. It involves that GPS antenna. Whenever that's plugged into that little socket, which you'll see has a little clip on the side, so it's hard to just pull the wire out, it's draining the battery even when the camera is switched off. And what it will do, it will drain a fully charged battery in about 12 hours. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, but what it actually does is it resets the time. You'll find that the next time you come to use the camera, the time that you spent all the effort setting in the menus is reset back to the 1st of the 1st 2012, which is a bit irritating. It doesn't pull the time through from the GPS data, it pulls it through from what you've set inside those menus. So that's really quite a big problem. So you've got a choice then. You can either keep the GPS data but have the incorrect time and date, or unplug the GPS antenna, therefore getting no GPS data, maps, speed, etc., but your time and date's right. And that's the choice. And one other thing to be careful of is just watch out if you're going to unplug that GPS lead, because look what happened to mine, the end snapped off. Now it might just be a manufacturing fault with mine, but it's something to watch out for. So taking into consideration the fact that this is probably the cheapest dual camera car DVR with GPS that you can get, overall it does a pretty decent job. Especially at night time, where the footage was really quite impressive. A little bit less so during the day, when at times it got a little bit too dark outside. And I really have no need for a camera that films what's going on inside the car whilst I'm driving, but I'm sure there are some people out there to whom this function will be useful. But unfortunately, even for them, it's not going to be any use at all at night time. And there just remains that one big issue that if you're using the GPS antenna, you'll invariably end up resetting the time. But as millions of video recorders from the 80s and 90s will attest, displaying the right time is not always the most important thing to everybody. The Dual Camera Car DVR with GPS was provided by ChinaVasion.com, and there's a link to the product in the video description. And all that remains for me now is to say thanks for watching.